Thanks for joining us today on the Seed Stage podcast, Simon. You've been a fan and a supporter of the pitch for quite a long time now, so really appreciate that. And I guess a lot of people know you from TikTok, from your very sort of public persona. But it'd be lovely to hear just first of all, who you are and what you do for a living.
Sure. Well, I guess I see myself as an entrepreneur, a person who likes to start businesses, someone that likes to build businesses. I love building brands. I've built 19 companies in my career. I've invested in 78 startups. So I just love the world of business. And I guess what I do for a living today is a bit confusing, but ultimately today, since I sold my company and retired, I worked on building out a model where people could get help for free to start their business. People could get the knowledge they need for free to do what they love. And about 4 years ago, I started leveraging social media to try and educate people about business for free. And it's blown up every month since. And today I have nearly 6 million followers online. And my video yesterday got organic 50 million views. And I try to encourage people to believe in their dreams. And so today I'm also an author. I've got a book coming out called What's Your Dream? And I'm basically trying to figure out how to fix the education system and give people what they need to do what they love.
That's awesome. There's loads of stuff I'm going to dig into there. But what was that clip yesterday that went viral? What maybe use that as an example to explain how your process works.
Yeah, I just ask someone what their dream is. They tell me what it is, and we put it up. And it's amazing what normal people walking the streets that have a dream, hearing it's just inspiring. And I think there's different reasons why clips do well, or stories do well. I've now also got the most popular YouTube video on business on YouTube worldwide, 4.5 million views. It's the number one business video. And I think the reason people are watching the long form content and these short form stories is because people want more choices. They want to understand how money works. They want to understand, if they don't want to work for someone, how would they start a company? And I think now more than ever, people can. And so, yeah, the clip is of Daisy, who dreams of opening up a bakery, and I help her do it.
Yeah. And this is Daisy from Hong Kong, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you say there, it's as simple as kind of asking people what their dream is. But when I watched you film, like the amount of effort you and your team put into kind of finding people, you're speaking to and helping an awful lot of people versus the ones that actually kind of go live, right? So I'd just kind of be interested to hear about a little bit more of that process of, like how you organize that day and how you find those stories that sort of really gleam and pop on social media.
Yeah, I mean, like any content creation, when you see a movie that's 1 hour 50 minutes long, it's often taken 6 months to film, right? So I think it's no different in content generally. I think there are videos where I just held my phone and asked someone and then edited it a little bit and put it up, and it's done quite well. But a lot of the time, we spend all day in a particular location asking often 100 plus people what their dream is, getting all sorts of answers, like a survey, people ignoring you, people being rude to you, people telling you weird dreams that probably not appropriate to put up on any platform. And then every so often someone tells you a dream that you can help make happen. In my case, someone like Daisy wanting to open up her own bakery is something I can help her do. So and then we document the story. So it starts on short form on TikTok and Instagram, and then we take it over to YouTube and share the whole journey. So sometimes we describe ourselves as a modern Dragon's Den model, I mean the filming side of it, and even because we're not really just making content, right? If we were just doing Mr. Beast, you can win a
Yeah.
Lamborghini, and then someone wins a Lamborghini, that's the end. We're actually helping people. So that's why I love the pitch, because it's a platform that helps people. Of course, that's why I built helpbank.com, because it's a platform that helps people. It's not just, there's a bit of advice, see you later.
Yeah.
It's like, here's how you raise money. Here's how you find a co-founder. So yeah, it's way beyond just a clip that we put live, but it definitely helps someone's business if their story goes viral on our platform, because then
Yeah.
their business becomes an overnight brand name, and that saves them a lot of money on marketing and so on. So yeah.
Yeah, and I just think it's worth. I don't think people realize that you talk to that 100 people and you help a lot of the people that you don't publish the footage of, right? Like I guess
Yes.
everyone thinks it's all about the clip, but really I've seen it just briefly the sort of heavy lifting that goes out on in the background to help a bunch of people that you might never use the footage, right? So I think that's worth shouting
Oh,
out.
the majority of people that we help within our platform, we don't have clips on them. We don't have video footage. Sometimes that's something I'm trying to fix because I think actually most businesses just need a bit of help on the marketing. 90% of the time, people have got a t-shirt brand and they're not got any sales, or they've got an online catering business and they haven't got any orders. Like people just need a bit of marketing. That's 90% of people's problems actually. So I get frustrated when we're helping so many people and not having clips on them. They're shy to go on camera, or it just we can't fake it. So yeah, it's definitely much deeper than the content you might see online, but we're trying to portray that now with things like our long form stories on YouTube, so people can follow people's whole journey, not just see the clip.
Yeah, and you've been talking a lot about sales as well recently, right? Because you mentioned marketing there, but it seems like those are the two things that always come up: sales, marketing, and help on that front. What can people do that are sort of faced with that daunting task of got great idea, really passionate about it, but they need to figure out the sales bit. That's maybe not part of their skill set by default.
Yeah, I would first of all say don't limit yourself by telling yourself that you're not good at sales or you can't do sales. Sales is just a process, and some of the most successful salespeople I have ever worked with have been introverts. So, for example, in my agency business that I built up in Hong Kong called Fluid, the one I sold to PricewaterhouseCooper, the number one salesperson there was my accountant. And so she's not an extrovert, and she was someone who would consider herself shy, but she would go for lunch, for example, with other CFOs, and she'd be so excited about what the company was achieving, what the company was doing. She'd tell the other CFOs at lunch how great Fluid was. And then those CFOs would go back to the office and talk to their CEO and say, I just heard about this company, Fluid, and maybe we should get them in. And so the
Yeah.
most amount of like business I used to ever get was from her. And I just think everyone needs to realize that they're a personal brand. Everyone needs to realize that they are selling in some shape or form. And it's a skill that you can learn and you should learn it. And if you want to learn it, the practical realities are there's two ways. I just put a YouTube video up, 50 minutes explaining all the stuff about sales for free. The other way is just go and do it. Like my first ever business at 15 years old was as a gardening company. And I just knocked on doors and said, Hi, can I take care of your garden? And people told me to sod off. People said no. People took the piss and tried to get the price down too low. But I learned how to sell. And it took me 3 weeks to learn how to sell by just knocking on doors every day. And it doesn't sound very glamorous, but that learning, that compound learning of dealing with rejection, learning to push back when people say no to taking care of their garden, those things are skills you'll never lose. So maybe, it's crazy as it sounds, pretend you've got a gardening company, go start knocking on some doors.
Yeah, just getting out of your comfort zone a little bit. I think to go back to that accounting example as well, I think there's two really important things there. One is that, she was really passionate about the work. And then the second one is that she could communicate that, right? That she could easily explain what you do and kind of why they should care. And I think that's so critical if you can give that to your team members and sort of embody that yourself.
No, totally. I spend a lot of time, and I do today in my present business. I've got 13 full-time people now working on Help Bank. And I mean, literally every day we reinforce the messaging around what we're trying to do. And I think that helps people when they're sitting with a friend in Nando's having dinner to explain it to someone who they might not think can help the business, but it turns out they can. And I think making sure that your team, your colleagues, your friends, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever is aware of the business and how to pitch it. So your job is to train your team to then be able to tell their partner, who that partner then can go and tell someone, who will then tell someone. And before you know it, you get a phone call or someone offering to help you.
And have you got any advice around how you can kind of distill your sort of passion and purpose into that and communicate it? Like often we meet early stage founders that kind of have a great idea, they're starting to build a business, but actually getting it down to like a simple sentence, that real just opener that works in any situation, Nando's, wherever, is actually quite difficult. How have you found that, and yeah, really refining your messaging?
I've been building what I'm building now for coming up to 5 years. And over the years, the messaging has changed and evolved. And I think a lot of it is to do with the delivery vehicle that you use. So, I do a lot of work on TikTok. That is video short form content. So your messaging has to be designed for that platform. I see way too many brands, for example, doing adverts on TikTok that were designed for TV and they've just chucked it on TikTok and they don't do very well. So I think you've got to tailor your message to the platform that you are communicating on. So on LinkedIn, it's generally sort of LinkedIn police, and you've got to keep it very non-personal. Although I think it's silly, but that's that platform. People want it all very serious. So when you're on TikTok, you can have more fun. I have more fun on TikTok with my messaging than I do on LinkedIn. So, but that being said, I think there's also there is an element of like internal communications messaging and external communications messaging. They are different. So, internally, sometimes we might talk about like our big ambitious plans as a long-term play, but if we communicated that externally, people might be confused at what we are today. So I think you've got to learn to understand. I think the purpose matters, right? Not what you do and how you do it is kind of fundamentally easy to write up. But the Simon Sinek model and the why you do it, the purpose you have behind it, that needs careful crafting. And maybe again, in my case, I've got two versions of this. So I have my personal reason for doing it. I was 15 years old when I was kicked out of home. I found building a business hard. No one would help me. When I did ask someone to help me, they would only do it if I paid them. And I didn't
Yeah,
have any money to pay them. So I struggled. So, and they said to me, if you don't pay, you don't pay attention, which was just total rubbish because I was desperate for the knowledge. I would have definitely paid attention. So I rebel against that philosophy that hurt me when I was 15 years old. That's why now I never charge anybody for help. All my knowledge is free. I don't put any of it behind a paywall because I'm helping that 15-year-old me, right? That's my personal message. On the help bank side, we message it out as it's a community of people there to help you for free, and we will pay people to help you for free, right? So as much as the business needs its own purpose, but I believe that if you link it back to your own personal purpose as the leader of the company, it gets you up earlier, it gets you to go a little longer, and a bit more motivated if it links to your personal purpose. If you're just filling a market gap, it's not as exciting. I think most people fall off. It's just filling a market gap.
yeah. And you mentioned the iteration and the craft that goes into that as well. And I was going right back, years on your TikToks yesterday, and it was fascinating to see how I think you always had the same belief set, but just kind of refining kind of how you communicate and what you're push out into the world.
Yeah, it's practice. I mean, these different channels now, like TikTok, they're all new. Short form content is actually, 3 years old. No one's an expert at it. I mean, I would say I am now an expert at it because I've done it every day, twice a day for 3 or 4 years. So I think, again, if you're going to communicate something, you have to practice it. If you look back at any of the successful YouTubers, you watch their first video, you will laugh and
Yeah.
it's not good. And even Mr. Beast, Mr. Beast is one of the most popular creatives on YouTube today, and his first video is literally him saying the words in the dictionary. I mean, it's not that entertaining, but it's where you start to practice your craft. And I think that's the thing. I mean, you see all these quotes all the time and they're true, which is you need to be willing to like be suck at something for a while. And if I'm a bit embarrassed if you went back and looked at my early TikTok, because I think there's me and my son dancing at a zoo. So it's not where I am today, but it's because I've done the reps. I've every single day gone to the virtual business gym and done the reps, and now I am one of the top influencers in business.
Yeah, and it's that door knocking thing with the sales, right? Like the more you go through that sales pitch, the easier it gets, the more you refine it, the iterations come through, and then it does start to click, right?
Yeah, and even now I still make mistakes. I mean, I'm experimenting all the time. I think the other thing is you've got to not be scared of failure. So I did a video a few days ago and it's not done that well. And it's because I was trying a different formula. And fine, I know now doesn't work, and I'll do it a different way next time. I think I'm not scared. I remember the first time I got a video with 5 million views, and the next video you upload is nerve wracking because you're like, what if the next video doesn't do well? And I think that that's part of a bit like building a business. You've got to be okay with failure. This business works, great. If it doesn't, I take the learnings away and build something else. And I think that's the key to it, that we don't, failure isn't described properly enough for people, because it's not really failure if you've learned something and the next time you do it, you're better at it.
Yeah, so let's dig into that a little bit. So you mentioned obviously the fluid exit, which was huge and supply changing for you, and then I know you had a couple of other quite big businesses over the years. But you mentioned at the start there that you've launched maybe 17 companies. Was that right?
I'm presently on my 19th business. Help Bank is
19.
my 19th company.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I've had a very varied career. I think if I look back, like my successes are often the ones that have failed, ironically, because I've learned so much from those failures that allowed me then to go do the successes. But I built a company called Fluid from the ground up, and sold it to PricewaterhouseCoopers. It took 15 years. It wasn't an overnight success. It took 15 years to build that company up and sell it. I built a company called Nest from scratch and built that out and sold it. I have built many businesses that have failed though, and I built a comic book business. I personally lost $1 million US on that business, but again, I learned so much doing it. And I think one of my favorite things sometimes is holding the products of failed businesses that I've had. In fact, I've got one here. This is the comic book business that failed. It's called Devishard. So I lost $1 million US building this business, and I got so many learnings from doing it. I still love the product though. I have it sitting right here next to me. I'm still really proud of what was created. Like, it didn't work. It was a failed financial business, but I learned a lot and I created something that I hold in my hand today still with pride, even though it's not a business I made money on. And I think that is, part of it. It's the journey. Because of this failed business, I understood culture in India. I learned how the comic book business works. I got to meet some really incredible people at Comic Con. Like, it just, I lost money, sure, but money is really just energy anyway. And ultimately, although I was devastated at the time to have a failure like this and lose that amount of money, it still now, for me, feels something I'm proud of. Weirdly,
Yeah. And what was so you mentioned the sort of cultural thing and the experience, and that's great. What about on the business side? Like, what was there that you took away that you were like, okay, now I understand why that model doesn't work, or how I could do it differently?
yeah, there's a couple of things. I first of all, I got the wrong partner in the business, and I should have been more careful. I think moral code is something I really check with people now. I like to meet people's families. I like to understand people's backstories a bit more. Back in those days, you know, I was 28 when I did that business, and someone who I partnered up with, of course, for legal reasons, I probably can't mention their name, but they weren't honest, and so it didn't work out because, in my opinion, their ethics weren't right. I should have done due diligence on them in that regard. I didn't. I just took them at face value, and they wanted to do something I also found really interesting. So we went ahead and did it. I think so partner due diligence is something that it taught me. I think also one of the big things was the comic book idea itself, which was, in a nutshell, was what if Batman or Superman landed in India or China? What would that look like, right? So, interestingly, when I pitched it to people in the West and said, Superman landed in China, what happened? Like, oh, Superman's evil. But the point I'm making is it wasn't actually my dream; it was their dream. I just liked the idea a lot. So when it came to, like, do I want to keep going with this business or shall I stop? I stopped in part because it wasn't my dream. It was the person who I partnered with dream. I just happened to like it and back them and jump in initially. But I now know that really, for me to be involved in something, it has to be true to me, not someone else directly, me running someone else's dream, if that makes sense. So that's why I love hearing other people's dreams now, because then I can back them to do their own dream.
Yeah. And so that's something that comes up on the pitch a lot. It's early stage startups. They're often looking for co-founders, perhaps with a specific skill set. So are there any questions you'd be asking people when you're getting to know them that you'd recommend other founders to use? You mentioned family there, but is there anything else you'd kind of want to ask when you're getting to know someone?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Just to reiterate, all the people I've invested in their businesses, I've met their partners in life. You can tell a lot without being judgmental. You can tell a lot by someone's partner. So I remember I was very close to investing in a company that actually did really well, despite me not investing. But I didn't invest because when I met them, I met their partner, and their partner was very like, oh, we've taken such a low, amount of money in each month now, and I can't travel business class anymore. And what we're going to do when we want to go on holidays? There's not enough money. And I knew they were going to have a hard time dealing with that in their life. They did do well, mind you, despite my review at that point there. But the thing is, I didn't want to be a part of a business where the founder was in pain every day. And so, I think it's those sorts of things for me are quite important. But beyond the relationship side of it, I think if it's not a personal problem for people, it's not often easy for them to keep going. And
Yeah.
so I really dig deep. Even people that work with me, I'm like, before anyone can work with me, I want to know what their dream is. I need to hear their dream. What is it they want to achieve? What is it they care about? Of course, if it's someone really good, I keep my fingers crossed that their dream matches my dream. But I don't want it. If someone has a dream that is not my dream, but they want to work with me, I would rather invest in them and help them make their dream happen than have them come and work for me, but it's not really their dream to fix the education system or help people do what they love, right? So I think that due diligence on the person and pure deep honesty, if I can get that from people, I find that tremendously liberating, because then I know what people want. I know what their agenda is. It's all clear. We can work towards it. It's when people don't tell the truth about what they really want, that's when I find it tough. Because, yeah, again, I invested in someone who told me their dream was to open up a restaurant, and I put 200,000 US dollars into that restaurant to help them make it happen. And then about 6 months into the restaurant, it wasn't doing that well. And the person in question was off doing photography every weekend. It turns out what they really wanted to do wasn't open a restaurant. What they really wanted to do was a photography business. So, I said, you should have told me that. I would have invested in the photography business. But I think sometimes people don't know what they want either. In that particular case, he'd spent 10 years in the F&B business. So in his mind, a restaurant was the natural thing to do because he's already got that experience. He didn't have the experience of being a successful photographer at that point, right? So I think digging in and helping people figure out who they really are and what their real dream is something maybe that helps me with my content today, because I have done that through my investment process.
Yeah, and that comes back to the point about failure as well. Like, I guess for that person particularly, maybe he did need to go, or she did need to go down that route and actually try it to know that that wasn't the fit.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, that's the other thing. Sometimes I think people need to do something they don't love to find out what they do love. And I think even today, I do things I don't love. We had a big thing recently, and long story short, before the podcast started, the toilets were dirty. I had to clean the toilets. There was no one else around to do it, and all the tech people were setting up all the tech, so I went and cleaned the toilets. And this time in my career, I'd be like, what am I doing cleaning the toilets? But it had to be done. Otherwise, guests would have arrived. If they'd gone to the toilet, we would have looked like unprofessional people. So, I think people don't realize that not every single day can be happy. Happy is a dangerous word, but if you have a mission, the outcome can make you happy.
I think it is a great example. I think you've hit on something that's so entrepreneurial. Like, entrepreneurs really just like to get shit done. Like they
Basically,
just want to get stuff done. And I think it's just having that personality of like, there's a problem, I'll just go and fix it. I won't
yeah.
presume it's somebody else.
Yeah, and I think there is a line. Sometimes you've got to delegate. You can't scale if you're doing it all. You have got to delegate. You have got to rely on other people. But I think I'm not. I try to leave my ego at the door. I've got an ego, but I try to not. I will clean the toilet if it's needed. That's it. And I don't really care if it means that the outcome is a better business or a better product that we're doing. And I'm not precious about it. It's like,
Yeah.
I've done worse.
Yeah. And you mentioned a couple of examples of sort of people you've helped there and different ways it's gone. Some of the clips that stood out the most for me over the years is when somebody decides that they're going to quit their job sort of out on that moment. And there's been a handful over the last 2 years. And I'd just love to hear like how that feels when you're then sat down with people afterwards, like how maybe a couple of them have sort of ended up doing.
Yeah, I mean, the quit your job thing is an interesting story, I guess. And I feel a huge sense of responsibility when people go for it. But equally, it's not really my responsibility. It's other people's lives. It's their choice. I think the way I look at it, if for example, today, someone listening to this podcast has a job at a call center or has a job in Tesco's, and let's say you quit and you try something. Now, if you've given yourself a bit of savings and a bit of runway and you've got the right help, then why not try? Frankly, you can always go back to Tesco's. You can always go back to the call center. I think that a lot of the time, people who have a job have a competitive advantage. If you have a job now, you can get a job in the future. And so if you can get your costs down, avoid debt, you can basically go for it. At least you're not going to be 90 regretting you didn't try. And so I always think, and people in question that have actually quit their job and done, they don't have kids, they live at home. The ones that I've been involved in reality, their cost base is low, and it's going to get very different as they get older. If they find a partner, they have kids, they get a mortgage, they get a car. That moment when they don't have those huge costs is like a huge opportunity. Whenever a university student says, "Oh, I can't start a business right now, I'm in university," I'm like, no, this is the time.
Yeah.
This is the time to do it, because as soon as you leave university, you're going to have real world costs. Like right now, somehow with your student loan and your student accommodation and your food and your lifestyle, you're not to live isn't costing you as much as it will the day you leave. So that's the exact time you should start a business. At least try. So, um, so yeah, I mean, again, as someone with a kid, as soon as you have kids, I have no time. I thought I had no time when I was building businesses, but having kids, there's another level of no time. Like
Yeah.
if you every minute's taken up, you leave them for an hour to go and do something, you feel guilty. You don't have that when you don't have kids. So, you should do it while you don't have kids, right? Take those risks while you don't have kids. I think that there are certain levels of responsibility that kick in that people need to think twice before doing it. But when you're young, if you're young, you've got no debt, you're living at home and or living low cost. Like go for it. At least
Yeah.
side hustle it. Like
Yeah.
just if you've got an idea, particularly, you've got to scratch that itch. And an employer today, if you come out of university and you started a business that failed, they're more likely to like you in the interview than someone that's just got a university degree. Bit of experience, a bit of gumption. I mean, most businesses I know will rather have someone that's actually tried to do something in university. That will give you an edge over someone that didn't do anything and just did the degree.
Yeah, and I do love that you push that point of, think about it as a competitive advantage. Like it's really hard when you don't have a lot of resources and you feel like you don't have the skills necessarily to do it. But the idea that you're out there saying, actually, look, you've got less risk because you've got less outgoings and so on, and making that point, I think that's so important. And just using that as a moment to, go try something. Similar to you, I've got young kids. I had to be made redundant to make the leap and start a business because it felt like I couldn't. I did feel trapped, So that I think making that point, and again, thinking about it by age, thinking about it by what's your nut, what do you need to get by every month.
Yeah. Equally, I speak to a lot of people in their 40s who maybe either they haven't had kids or their kids are getting older and they're a bit trapped by their lifestyle. So, they've got a nice house, they've got a nice car. I mean, I say a lot of people get trapped by all this stuff too. They don't they want to take a risk and do something, but either their partner can't do it with them or they're scared to lose all those trappings. You get too comfortable. And I think that's also a sad reality of a lot of people's middle class life. And I say it carefully and sensitively, but a lot of people are trapped. That's why I always tell people having no money is a competitive advantage. Like having nothing is real advantage because you've got nothing to lose. You should go for it when you've got nothing to lose, right? But when you've got a house and only 10 years left on the mortgage and you've got a car, you've got these holidays, a couple of holidays a year, it starts to be a trap for people. They don't want to go down, but they also can't go up. So they become a little bit trapped.
Yeah. So just want to talk quickly about your sort of classic opener and then your book. So you developed this line now that you use a lot, like "What's your dream?" Like, do you remember when you first tried that? Was that something that you had right at the beginning? Did that just sort of pop up randomly? Where did that come from?
Yeah, so it started really. I had this philosophy at the very beginning of going deep on content. I wanted to be anti the course selling people. So I have an issue with people selling courses, and especially those that are saying they're successful entrepreneurs, and then they sell a course. I mean, like property people that are making so much money in property, and but if they're making so much money in property, then great, just help people do the same. You don't need to charge some silly course fee to youngsters, promise them to make loads of money in property. I just have an issue with that model, and so I think I wanted to make sure I never charged anyone. To stick to that, it's caused some really exciting outcomes. So, for example, I was on live on TikTok. I think it was about 3 years ago, roughly, and I was giving people knowledge on TikTok. And then when I closed the live, suddenly the TikTok thing said you've made 148 US dollars on this live. And I realized that TikTok had done an update and you can now gift people in the live. And so I'd made a load of money basically on the live, right? That was a lot of money to me in my head, considering I had nothing once. And so I thought, oh God, I've earned money from helping people. That's not meant to happen. So basically, I went to the bank, I took the money out, and I thought I'll give it away to someone. That's how I can make sure I haven't broken this rule where I'm not going to charge people for help. And I went into a supermarket, and there was a lady filling up the counter. I was getting a sandwich for lunch, and she was filling up the counter, and I just turned to her and I just said, "Hey, what's your dream?" And she told me this incredible story, and it kind of blew my mind. I mean, complete stranger telling me this incredible story. And anyway, I gave her the money and just said that's amazing, but I didn't record it. And I left the supermarket, and I thought, oh, I should have recorded that. Like if I'd recorded it, I could have shared it with the world. Like it deserves to be shared. And then I basically went to Pizza Express straight after because I didn't get a sandwich. And this time I took my phone out and I recorded someone as they came to me to ask me how many people for a table, and the rest is history, as it were. Like I just love the question because it opens people's minds up. Because at school we get asked this wrong question. At school we get asked, "What will you do when you grow up?" But the real question we should be asking our kids is, "What will you do? What problem will you solve when you grow up?" Not what will you do. If you think about what problem you can solve, you can have 6, 7, 8 different careers, right? But when you ask people what they're going to do, they get stuck in it. I'll be a doctor, I'll be a lawyer, and so I think that what's your dream is my version of that. It's like, if you could do anything, what would you do? Like what excites you? It,
I love it, and I love seeing how animated you get. Like I can see the passion just in your answers as you're saying the question, right?
it's just like an incredible way to live, to be able to walk around and ask people what their dream is and hear. Like, I don't know. It's kind of blown my mind that normal people are the most interesting people in the world, and all these celebrities that everyone wants to meet are often the most boring. Like these people are just so amazing. And the other thing that's amazing, and what does get me passionate, is how kind people are too. Like I put up a story of a young kid who wanted to start a business, and I put it on LinkedIn, and he needed to raise a bit of money. And in the comments on LinkedIn, everyone offered him the money, and he got the money from the comments on LinkedIn. I directed all the comments to a GoFundMe. I put some money in there, and everyone put the money in there. He got the money he needed. Like, people are actually kind.
Yeah, and I think as well when you're running a business, so a lot of the people listening to this will, they're into their startup, maybe a couple of years into it, and I think when you're in the trenches day to day, like it is hard sometimes to find that moment in life just to step back and sort of remind yourself, yeah, what is your dream, or just give yourself to think about how that might space to think about how that might have changed. So I know a lot of the people you do are sort of right at the beginning, but I think that's a good question for everyone, just to step back for a minute, have a breather, and just be like, yeah, is this still my dream? Is it what I want to do? Like, where am I heading?
No, and I think the answers, and this will be in my book. So if I tell you this, you don't need to buy the book. But in the book, I talk about, like, the answer is very revealing to where people have got their mind to. So, for example, one of the most common answers is people will say, "I want to be rich," right? But that isn't really the dream. That's as far as their brain has let them go with the dream. Because my next follow-up question to anyone that ever says that is, okay, great, how are you gonna do it? Like, being rich is an outcome of doing something that makes the world a better place or brings value to people. And actually, being rich itself, it's a cliche, but won't make you happy. So it's like, okay, great, you want to be rich? That's cool. That's fine. I mean, I wanted to be rich. There's nothing wrong with that. But what does rich mean? Right? Because to me, rich is freedom of time. Okay. Second is, like, well, how are you gonna do it? And that's the thing I find interesting, because that's one of the answers that, in my opinion, is a certain level of people's brain awareness. They want to be rich, great, kind of awareness, but how to do it is completely lacking. I blame the education system for this partly, but that the people just have no idea how money works. They have no idea how they're going to do it. They're kind of hoping to win the lottery, or that Mr. Beast is going to give them a Lamborghini or something, but they're not. They don't have and understanding how to actually achieve it. And it's totally achievable. That's the crazy thing. Like, money is not a real thing. It's a virtual thing. It's an energy thing. And you can definitely get rich, but you kind of need a plan.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about the book then. So I swear when we were speaking about 3 years ago, you might have had a version of it and you
But
were
yeah,
unsure about it. So how did it get?
when I first
Yeah.
retired, I wrote a book, and it was a book I will never publish. And it was really more a book kind of downloading all the things that I just learned building all these companies and living in Hong Kong and so on. And I really wrote it for my son so he could read what happened to his dad. I will never, that book is not really publishable. Interestingly enough, I mentioned it earlier, but 5 weeks ago, I put a video up on YouTube with all the knowledge I have in business, because what I wanted to be careful of is I don't want my book to suddenly be this thing that I'm charging people for help. Right. So my philosophy on the book is not, if you want my knowledge, it's free. It's on YouTube. You can go and watch it. All the things I know, it's there. You don't need to buy the book to get my knowledge. My book will have knowledge in it for people, but you can get all the knowledge for free on YouTube. And the money I make on YouTube, by the way, I give it away, right? So I want to keep pure to this. So books, though, however, you need to charge them because there's printing, there's distribution. The bookshops all need money. They can't turn the lights on and pay their staff if they don't make a margin on the book. So get distribution for the book worldwide. You need everyone to make money. So a book is one of those products that has to be charged for. But in a way, I wanted to call the book Robin Hood, because in part, I want to take the profit from that book and fund people's dreams. And so you buy the book, you will get some of my knowledge. But the main thing about the book for me is a philosophy that I want to share with people, which is I want to move away from give and take, which is a noun we all believe is good. I'll help you if you help me. We've got used to this as normal. That's actually not normal. The book is about how we need to move away from give and take to give without take. We need to start helping each other in any way we can, because we need to make the world a better place. And I ask people to buy it to support the mission, and all the proceeds from that book I'm giving away.
Yeah. And I really double down on that point. I think, your philosophy of you can get it all for free. It's accessible to everyone. I love it. I think there's so many, like all of us have a handful of creators that we absolutely love. They put a lot of value into the world. And I think, if you don't have the money to buy the book, don't buy it. But if you have been following Simon for a while and this is just an opportunity for you to be like, I love what you do. I'm going to get some value from it. Get the pre-order and kind of back the community that way.
Exactly, yeah. And I've been overwhelmed, by the way, on that side. It hit number one on Amazon. It's going to be a Times bestseller when it released already by the numbers. And so I'm proud of that. And it's and I know that I've got a community that's not just about following. It is a community that's deep and behind what I'm trying to achieve. I couldn't be helping all these people if it wasn't for the community that I now serve, right? So I think that the book is a symbol of that. It's like, to me, it's like a mini manifesto. I'm being careful not to be political about it, but like, this is a philosophy on how we can make the world a better place.
Love it. And as a final point, so thinking about the pitch audience specifically, so it's all early stage startups. They're very ambitious people looking for investment. Is there any sort of final thoughts you want to leave with not just sort of founders broadly, but our audience particularly?
Sure. When it comes to getting investment in your business, if you want investment in your business, here's a little tip for you. Everybody you speak to, ask them for advice, don't ask them for money. If you ask for money, you'll get advice. If you ask for advice, you'll get money, right? Because every investor wants to feel useful and like they can contribute. And they want to test your ability to listen, whether you listen to their advice. If they're involved in a business where you don't, then they feel pointless. No one just wants to feel like money, right? So maybe keep that philosophy in your head when you're asking for money. And the other thing is, like, pick your investors wisely. Like, get people that have the same moral code as you, the same philosophy as you, actually care about the purpose. Be careful with VC funds and stuff like that, because they're 4 years in, 4 years out. They're going to want their money out maybe before you're ready, and that can cause disruption in the business. And sometimes I've seen businesses collapse because they raised the money from the wrong person. In fact, right now I'm involved in a business where they have the wrong person on their cap table, and no one else wants to invest in that business at the higher level because they got the wrong person in the early stages. So, just think long term. And honestly, if you can, build a business where you don't need an investor. I know it's old school, but build a profitable business. You don't need a new boss who could be an investor.
Love it. Well, thanks so much for giving us your time today, Simon. Really appreciate the advice, and I'm sure we'll see you at some of the pitch events this year.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, as always, Chris, for all the work you do.